Alright, today guys we're going to talk about graphing parabolas or quadratics in vertex form. Okay guys, so this is going to be very similar to when we did absolute value, except it's going to be a different function. Our function now is y equals x squared. Okay, a quadratic, something with an x squared. Okay, so when I make my table for just this basic function or parent function of x squared, we're going to pick those basic 5 x coordinates, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. Okay, so then now I'm going to square those numbers. So -2 squared is 4, -1 squared is 1, 0 squared is 0, 1 squared is 1, and 2 squared is 4. Okay, so when I plot these points, -2, 4, okay, so over left 2, up 4, left 1, up 1, 0, 0, then the other 2, okay? That is our parent function, and I'm going to go ahead and graph it in. Now notice it kind of looks like a V, but the points are kind of off. It's actually going to make a parabola or a U shape, okay? This is going to be helpful when we go to graph our next ones where we have some transformations or some shifts. Okay, this should look pretty familiar. Here is vertex form of a quadratic. Okay, so we do notice something pretty familiar. We have our A, our H, and our K. Okay, so our A is what we multiply our y column by. Remember, that'll stretch or compress our graph, and also if it's negative, it'll flip it. Okay, so if you want to, for reflect, kind of maybe put a negative there, reminding you negative will flip it or reflect it. Our H, remember our H is our horizontal shift. That's side to side. Okay, and remember it's x minus h, so that means that it's going to be the opposite. Okay, so if I add, it's going to go to the left. If I subtract, it'll go to the right. Now remember, k is our vertical shift. Which is up or down, and it's just exactly what you would think. Now, it's also called vertex form because our h and our k is our vertex. So HK, that point where it goes left and right, up and down, HK, that is our vertex. Okay, so if you want to write somewhere that the vertex is HK, that's kind of an important thing, and we'll deal with that a little bit later. Okay, here's your steps. It's very similar to what we've done in the past. Make our table, put our 5 points, shift our 5 points, and connect the dots, or make our U, or our parabola. So let's take a look. So I'm going to make my table, x and y. Okay, so I have -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. And remember, we're squaring these. So -2 squared is 4. -1 squared is 1. 0, 1, 4. Okay, I made my table, but let's go back to our original graph. If I look at this, we have h, a k, and an a value. So our h is that -3, so that's going to tell us that it's going to the right 3. Okay, the -1 tells us that we're going to go down 1. Remember that 2 just tells us what we need to multiply. That's the a value, so it just tells us that we're going to multiply our y values by 2. Okay, so I'm going to multiply all these points by 2, just our y values. So this is going to be 8, 2, 0, 2, and 8. Okay. Now let's go ahead. Remember, we're not going to use this anymore. We're just going to do those points now. So -2, 8. Let's go ahead and plot those points that we have now. So -2, 8. I would go ahead and pause it to plot those points, but I'm going to go ahead and plot them all at the same time. All right, so make sure you plot those points. I just plotted these points right here. -2, 8, -1, 2, 0, 0, 1, 2, and 2, 8. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead, before I do this, I'm going to go ahead and shift my points. So I'm going to go to the right 3, down 1, to all these points. So I'm going to go right 3, down 1, right 3, down 1, right 3, down 1, right 3, down 1, and then on the other side, right 3, down 1. Okay. Now I'm going to draw in my parabola. All right. And that's that. As we get better at it, we'll start shifting them left or right, and you don't have to draw the parent function, but for these first ones, I'll do the parent function just so that you see them. Okay, let's take a look at this one. All right, so that +4 tells me that we're going to go left or right, and it's +4, so we're going to go to the left 4. Okay, there's no up or down, so we don't need to worry about shifting it up or down. Okay, but I do have a negative out there, so that tells me that I'm going to multiply my table by -1. Okay, so here's our x, here's our y. So remember -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. We're squaring those, so 4, 1, 0, 1, 4. Now I can multiply all of these by that -1. So this becomes a -4, -1, 0, -1, -4. Okay. So remember, once we multiply by that a, we don't need those points anymore. So I'm going to graph these. So -2, -4, -1, -1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, -1, and 2, -4. Okay. So there's our points, but we're going to shift all those to the left 4. Okay. So if I shift them all to the left 4, notice it's going to keep that same shape. Okay, just all of my points are going to go to the left 4. That's okay that those points overlapped. That red graph just helps us to kind of get our parent function on there, or our basic shape. That was a really bad graph. Okay. And there's our graph. Notice how since it was a negative, it was upside down, or reflected. Okay, let's look at this next one. Notice there's not anything inside with that x, so there is no h. There's just a k, which tells me that this -2 tells me I'm going to go down 2. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and make my x and my y. And I do notice how it does have a multiply by an a value of 3. So I know that I'm going to multiply all these points by 3. So always make this table first. So -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. So 4, remember we're just squaring them. 4, 1, 0, 1, and 4. Okay. Now I'm going to times all of those by 3. So I get 12. Okay. 3, 0, 3, and 12. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and plot those points. And I can actually just start at down 2 if I wanted to, and then just plot these points going over 2 from that new point up 12. Then I go over 1, up 3, over 1 the other way up 3, over 2 up 12. So you can kind of pretend like that once you shift it as your new 0, 0. If you don't understand or you're kind of like iffy about that, you can always just draw your parent graph and then shift it down 2, and you should end up with this same graph. Okay. Now try your best to kind of round this out and make it a parabola. All right. So there's our graph. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and take a look at this one. You might freak out at the fraction. Don't. It's just the same process. That +5, this tells us that we're going to go to the left 5. This tells us that we're going to go up 3. We're just going to multiply our table by -1/2, or -0.5. So when I make my table, okay, we have -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. So square those. 4, 1, 0, 1, 4. Okay, multiply all those by -0.5, or take half, right? So -0.5. So times them all by -0.5. Okay, so we're going to end up getting -2, -0.5, because half of 1 is just a half. Okay, 0, -0.5, and -2. Now let's go ahead and graph these points. Remember, we don't need these anymore. Okay, so -2, -2, -1, 1/2, so it's going to be between 1 and 0. Okay, 0, 0, 1, -1/2, and 2, -2. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and shift all those up left 5, up 2, or up 3, I mean. Okay. There's our vertex point. Now I'm going to go to the left 1.5, left 2, down 2, okay, or just shift your points over. Okay. There's our new graph. Change my line color. Okay. And that's our graph. Okay. Okay, so when it gives us the graph and it wants the equation, we're going to kind of work backwards. So we're going to use this basic equation. So a times x minus h squared plus k. All right. So when we take a look, okay, our vertex is our hk. So that's kind of something that can help us, is that vertex is just hk. So this vertex of this graph is over 2, up 4. So it's 2, 4, that point. Okay. So remember, that's h and k. So I can actually write my equation using that h and k. Okay, so it's x minus h, so x minus 2, and plus k, so plus 4. Okay, that's one way to look at it, or we can just look at the shift, because normally we start at 0, 0. Okay, so if I go to the right 2, that means my h is going to be minus 2, and then I went up 4, so that means my k would be positive 4. So there's kind of two ways that you can look at it, right? Because I went right 1, or right 2, up 4. Okay. Now when I do the a value, remember a is what we multiply our y values by. Okay. So normally, when we did our first points, it was just negative 1, 1 and 1, 1. Okay. So that just means that when I went over 1, I just went up 1. Okay. So now when I look at this new graph, okay, we're just going to see, did I multiply my y value by anything when I went over 1. So if I go over 1, I still go up 1. So I didn't multiply it by anything new. Okay? So my a value for this would just be 1, which we don't need to write if it's 1. So that is my answer. Okay, so if I take a look at this one, I'm going to go ahead and still use that y equals a x minus h squared plus k. Right? Now when I go to do this, remember we can just look at our vertex, which is negative 2, 3. Okay, or we can look at how it's shifted, okay, which is shifted to the right 2, up 3. So when I go to write this, sometimes I just like to set up this part first. Okay, so I'm going to have x right 2, so it's going to be plus 2, or think x minus a negative 2 would be plus 2. And my k is 3, so plus 3, or I went up 3. Now our a value for this one, okay, remember if I go, normally if we go over 1, we go up 1. Well, right away I notice that if I go over 1, I go down. So I know I'm going to have a negative a value. Okay, now when I go, remember this is what we multiply by, so normally I go down 1, but I didn't go down 1, I only went down a half. Okay, so I multiplied my y value by a half. So this is going to be negative a half. Okay, and that is going to be our equation. Go ahead and jot that down and go ahead and get started on your practice problems.